So here I am on a hot, muggy day, running up these stairs 10 times, as usual. So why do I keep doing this, you might wonder? Well, I've hiked many mountains in the past few years, especially the past 2 years, but it's all leading up to one mountain. I was now venturing into uncharted territory. Here be dragons. Every section of this mountain trail was numbered, and from here on even they this were written steep
in
wall, bold, with the I ninth came all section the way being the here just infamous for cliff, training Kani no
for one
Tatebai.
mountain.
There are 4 notable
Mount
risky areas
Tsurugidake.
that I had to prepare myself for. So here I am, July 2021, at the top of Mount Tsurugidake. It's my second time to the top. And believe it or not, even this tough mountain, also nicknamed the Mountain of Death sometimes, is still just training. And like I said, it's all for one mountain, Mount Tsurugidake, which I'll be hiking very soon. Even Mount Fuji, hiking it at night, traveling all the way from there across the caldera at night to see the sunrise. All of this has just been training for Mount Tsurugidake. Tsurugidake, the sum of all danger and awe. Over 10 years hiking in Japan, I've experienced a variety of challenges across very wide mountain shapes and sizes. And for every hike, there's always different factors. For example, Mount Fuji has the highest total altitude, and other mountains are more remote, and some require technical training, but Mount Tsurugi is all of them combined. In 2020, I finally went on a hike to explore the area and to take a look at this mountain, which was known as the most dangerous mountain climbable in Japan. But that year, I brought a backpack which weighed over 50 pounds, and it burdened me down. So I made it to my Tsurugi, the White Arrow. There are still a lot of long, rocky slopes to get to this point even, and from the top of this mountain I still had another 5 ways to go back up and down Mount Besan, so that was as far as I made it that year. For the next following year, I had to train all the weak points that I noticed during that first climb. These 5 areas were leg strength, back strength, endurance, technique, as well as some mental fortitude. The next area that I needed improvement was back strength and carrying my backpack. It was far too heavy during the last hike, and I was too exhausted even though I didn't even take all my gear past the Raichosawa campground. So I did small hikes during the winter using carrying a weight in my backpack, and right before the real hike I started wearing the real backpack fully packed. So the reason I hike these steep stairs with a heavy backpack so many times a week is all training for Mount Tsurugi. It's to make sure I have enough strength in my back by the time I get to the hard part, which is known as the Kani no Tatebai, the vertical crab walk. From about a week before the final hike, I had to carefully plan out my climbing strategy. I planned to first climb Mount Besan the first day and camp at the Tsurugisawa campground. From there, I would start the next hike just before 4 a.m. and climb over my Tsurugi by 7 a.m. with hopes to reach the top of the mountain by around 9 o'clock, 9:30. Then I would take the long but safer Hyatt Ski One route back down. It's good to have a raincoat just in case. Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. On that note, here are my hiking harness and hooks. I have a nice sleeping bag. This is my tent with rain cover. Here's my bag of snacks. On this mountain, I'm bringing a hiking helmet because there's a chance of falling rocks, but nothing's better than the old Tilly hat from my grandfather, so he'll be looking out for me. 1 pair of pants, 2 shirts, and 2 long sleeve shirts. My old trusty hiking gloves. Sweat towels because I sweat. About 2-liter bottle of water and a 1-liter bottle of water. Some socks and underwear. Some hiking glasses, wallet, and some other tools. Anti-bug spray, sunscreen, and mint oil in case headaches. Got my headphones, it's summer, but up there, you know, you never know, it'll get cold. Whole bunch of camera and GoPro equipment, some night light glasses, 3 different phone chargers, trusty hiking boots, and all of that is gonna fit into there. And I got my 2 hiking poles and my watch. So it probably took me a good hour or so to fully pack everything I needed into that bag. And even with all of the lighter gear compared to the previous year, it still weighed over 15 kilograms, which was still much better than the previous year, which was almost 30 kilograms. In order to reach the starting point at a reasonable time, I decided to splurge and take a faster Rapid Express train. But even from there, I still had 3 bus rides, a cable car, a ropeway, and many other trains. I was pretty concerned when I saw the clouds looming overhead. Next I took the tunnel bus, and this brought me towards the Kurobe Dam, which is a very spectacular site that a lot of tourists go to. So at this point, it was already very high altitude compared to other places. But just from here, the view was already quite spectacular. And of course, there's the giant waterfalls. But I still had a long way to go. The mountain I was looking for was already concealed by all the clouds. So then I took the cable car up the inside of the mountain, then followed by a ropeway.
Station, altitude 1,828 meters, to Daikanbo Station, altitude 2,360 meters. We'll climb around 500 meters and travel a distance of 1.7 kilometers. The Tateyama Railway is famous for using a single span of cable without a single supporting pylon.
That doesn't sound safe. When I finally arrived at the top of the ropeway, it had started to spit a little bit of rain, which was a bit concerning, but it still wasn't too bad. I was hoping the weather would pass sooner than later, so I was almost ready to start the hike. So the weather's going rainy, sun, rain, sun, so I got my raincoat on. It's like a sun shower right now, so I'm having a little spinach bun before the big hike begins, and we'll see how it goes. Here, so I'm going to go around this place past by the Pond of Blood, then go around here, that's near the Hell Valley, and then all the way up to Raichosawa Campground, and that's where I'm going to climb Mount Bisan. So there's still some snow here. Now, those above are clouds. That is not a cloud, actually. That is sulfuric gas from the Hell Valley. So, thank goodness I got a mask. So I'm soon approaching Jigoku no Tani, which is the Valley of Hell. So I'll be able to see it just around the corner in 1 second. And there it is. there is the top of Mount Bessan. So I have to pass by the little pond of blood and the valley of hell, and then climb up that mountain during... I'm not really a fan of these thunder clouds that are coming by either. So got a lot ahead of me, just like this guy here. All right, time to go. The sulfur gas is very similar here to that of Hakone, so it's like Owakudani. That flag though says that the gas is on its way, so I had to be careful. It's the Pond of Blood, or if you've seen Lord of the Rings, the Dead Marshes. Oh. I can definitely smell that sulfur. At 2:30 p.m., just before I arrived at the first campground below Mount Bessan, the wind and rain started coming down really fast and heavy. I quickly ran to the campground toilet for shelter, and it was quite a challenge running down the steep steps because they were completely wet, so I wanted to do everything I could to avoid slipping here. The rain, as I got closer and closer to the Raichosawa campground, the rain just started to get heavier and heavier, which is why what you're seeing here is recorded on my GoPro and not my cell phone, because I needed to protect those things from the water. Around 30 minutes later, it didn't look like the rain was going to stop any time at all, and a whole bunch of people had been huddled into the toilet. The rain continued onward, and some people were already debating to retire and quit for the day, because it just looked like the whole hike was completely ruined. So everyone here was not having a good time, to say the least. And so I kept just sitting there checking my weather, saying hopefully, it'll be better soon. But it is really hard to tell at this point. So I didn't want to have come all this way just to give up at this point. But sooner than later, I had a very short window of opportunity that came to me. The rain briefly stopped, so I'm going to try to make a run for it. Not sure if this is exactly the wisest idea, especially considering the rain might come back. But generally, it's supposed to calm down a bit from here. You can never tell. And also, it's kind of slippery. So I'm not really sure what to do. Let's see. I'm going to test out this route a little bit. Let's see. At this point, I only had about 2.5 hours left of sunlight, and I had to go up over this dangerous bridge and then up a wet and slippery mountain with a chance of getting caught in the rain halfway up. It was a daunting challenge, but I wasn't ready to give up yet. I pushed forward and with all my strength and speed, somehow made it to the top of Mount Bessan within just 75 minutes, which was a huge improvement over my climb the previous year, and I was doing this in much worse conditions. So I just power climbed it all the way up from that little campground, and I did it with a 35-pound backpack, and the rain has come back again. It seems I made the window to the top here just in time. However, I still have to go down again to the next campground, and it might be raining again for a bit, so I gotta spend a few minutes to think this one through as well. I could always try to buckle down here. I'm not sure if this is a place or an emergency shelter, but just thinking some options. But that was amazing. It said it would take 2 hours to do that. I did it in an hour with that backpack on, so my back's a bit sore. So it's about another 40 minutes to an hour down through this misty trail. and down there is the next campground. So it's just 5:15 p.m. so I can still make it before it gets dark. Hopefully the wind, no thunderstorms or anything hit. So I'm just gonna try to be as cautious as possible here, and hopefully I can get there. Mount Tsurugi is hiding behind the clouds right there in the distance. So I guess we'll just see how things look tonight and tomorrow. So just gotta get down there safely. The great Tsurugi begins to reveal itself. I did it. There's the campground. I can see it just a bit further. Oh, it's now 6:45. Still hasn't rained yet, which is good. I finally got my tent set up, a lot better than my last hike recently. And that right there is Mount Tsurugi in the distance. So I'll be going for that tomorrow morning. So my entire body is exhausted already after hiking and going through all that rain. So hopefully the weather's a bit better tomorrow, but you never know. So gotta be prepared for everything. All right. Tomorrow's the real deal. The weather keeps changing. 1 minute it says it's going to be cloudy, 1 minute sunny, 1 minute heavy rain. So, it's really hard to tell out here. The weather changes very drastically. So I'm just going to play it by ear and see how tomorrow goes. Small update. It's windy as hell and raining out. And actually, it's about 10 at night now. And strangely, the loudest thing is a guy like a few tents over who's snoring. Hiking shoes here got completely drenched during that rainfall yesterday. And in case it rains again, but I just don't want wet, cold feet. So eventually I got tired of just sitting in the tent in the cold wind. So at around 3:30 in the morning, I got out. I started putting the tent away and had it fully packed up in my bag by 3:45 in the morning. And from this point, I started the hike. So just from 3:45, and there was no starlight to guide my way. So I had to rely on the pitch black to get to the Tsurugi cabin on the trailhead. And then I encountered something unexpected. So one thing I absolutely did not expect was to have to walk across a frozen ice ravine in the late hours of the night. I carefully crossed the icy road and rocky terrain and arrived at the mountain cabin at the base of Tsurugi just in time before the sunrise. I went inside and I got a very fancy cup of coffee, which was definitely needed after yesterday's hike. And as I waited and enjoyed my little morning breakfast, and the sun came out from behind the mountains, it was absolutely amazing. It's now 5:20 in the morning, and now the real hike to Mount Tsurugi begins. As I moved upwards towards the wide Tsurugi peak, the beautiful orange sunny skies went away, and I was returned to the cold and misty wind and clouds. But I made it to the top, actually, the my Tsurugi peak, within a short amount of time, despite all the challenges. So this is the top of my Tsurugi. This is the furthest that I made it last year. So it's time to go on to the real deal now. I'm not liking this wind, so as long as there's no intense rain, I'm still in fairly good shape. Haven't used any snacks yet either, so actually making pretty good time. So let's hope this stays this way. Here be dragons. I was now venturing into uncharted territory, Every section of this mountain trail was numbered, and from here on they were written in bold, with the 9th section being the most dangerous. Not too long after, I saw another chain wall ahead of me. This was Heizo no Atama, also known as the Fin. There were some metal bolts deeply secured into the rock face to be used as hand grips and stepping platforms as the hiker ascends the wall. I took one careful step after another for over 2.5 minutes. Each time I had to be very careful where my carbiners were until I reached the top. And then to my shock, I realized that the chain continued down a straight cliff along the other side. Also, at the critical moment, I heard a man behind me yell. I looked back, but he was fine. A moment later, I heard him yell and curse again, thinking he had slipped. As I continued to make my way down, the odd yelling continued, and I realized this hiker probably had some form of Tourette's, and I'm sure the stress of being such a perilous situation was sending it into overdrive. Still, I focused on the wall until I reached the bottom of the chained area, but it wasn't over just yet. What followed was a long, horizontal walk across the mountainside, and the most unnerving part of this section was that there was no chain for support. However, the path was slightly wider than the 6th section, but I still had to be careful of my heavy backpack throwing me off balance. I could see a giant glacier on the right side of me as I ascended up this cliff, but I just took one foot in front of the other with both of my hands holding the left side of the wall, and I tried my best not to look too far down the other side. It was here where I reached the 8th chain section, Heizo no Koru, also known as the ledge. This actually wasn't as difficult as the previous sections, but I also knew what it was leading up to, the famous Kani no Tatebai. Still, I moved forward and slowly up the rope, being careful with my carbiner and making sure I was carefully locked in. This part was probably the most dangerous, when I had to just step around a ledge with just my hand and no rope. To the right of me was just a drop into nothingness, as I couldn't see what was below me because of the fog. So, as I continued moving forward, I passed over a giant ice sheet where there was actually a group of hikers climbing it, part of a hiking. And that's when I turned the corner and I saw a couple staring above them in awe and horror. I looked up myself and finally realized I had arrived. So, I'm taking my first long break. I'm just at the bottom of the legendary Kani no Tatebai, the vertical crab wall, and it lives up to its intimidating I stay in with my body to its maximum Kani no Tatebai, the wall of the vertical crab. 100 meters of pure exposed rock face at a steep 90-degree angle, with nothing but a couple bolts and a chain rope to hold on to. To further exacerbate the already daunting climbing conditions, the moment I finally approached the wall, I could feel it start to rain, but I was well beyond the point of going back, so I put my left foot onto the rock, grabbed the chain rope above me, and began to climb. It was one slow step after another. I took extra time to ensure I was clipped into the chain at all times. Because the rope was vertical, I had to make it to each knot before I could resecure the harness. There was a line below me, but I wasn't going to let them make me feel rushed. So I moved forward, pulling the chain, moving inch by inch slower up the giant wall. It was taking a lot longer than I wanted to. There was one point, and I was only a quarter of the way to the top, but for the life of me, I couldn't figure out where to grip onto with my hand. Then, I had also had difficulty figuring out where to put my foot next. This area can become quite a daunting challenge, and you don't want to be dangling too long on the side of the cliff. Fortunately for me, there was a hiker below me with an orange helmet who was able to point out the correct spot. So I was very thankful he he was there to show me the right way to go. I think he had definitely climbed it before. So I moved forward, pulled myself upwards, continued on to the next section. The whole area, this Kani no Tatebai, it went on for, I think, a grand total of about 13 minutes. 13 full minutes while carrying that heavy backpack, just dangling to the side of this cliff, and making sure I didn't make a single tiny error. One small problem with that clip, one slip, and it all just goes down to the start. But I kept my mind straight, and this is where all those mental training came into focus. The plus side on this cliff is that I only had to look up, and I didn't have to look down to see just how difficult and how much of a drop there was below me as I reached the top part of it. The last section here didn't have any segments for the carbiner to clip onto, so I had to do it all at once. So this was entirely done without really any additional support, which was a bit dangerous. And then when I finally grabbed that extra chain at the top and clipped myself in, I felt relieved. I had a small little horizontal chain to move across, and that would be the end of it. Finally, I was able to turn around and just see the daunting task that I had just finished. I did it. So after a short breather, I continued to push forward, eager to see that summit. I turned the corner, I climbed up the next section here, waiting for, to see the top of the mountain in the distance. But instead, what did I find? Another rope section, another chain dangling down another rocky cliff. That's right, there were two sections to this Kani no Tatebai. However, this section was a bit less of a steep angle. There was only one spot that required me to basically do a full pull-up. It was this section here. There was no point for my legs to pull onto, so I just had to push myself all the way up here. And it was exhausting, but after this point, it actually wasn't so big of a problem. From this point on, I realized that the worst was behind me. So knowing this, I continued onwards with a much more positive feel. In the final stretch to the stop, I passed by many hikers that gave me words of encouragement. "You're almost there! Only 10 more minutes!" they would all say. And then I reached the next group of hikers, and they would say, "You're almost there! Only 15 more minutes left." And I think I heard that about 4 more times, and it was actually still another 40 minutes to the top. When I got near the summit of the mountain, the weather of the clouds below me started to clear up. I could just see how high up I was all over these jagged rocks. And finally, I made my way towards the summit, the rocky summit of Mount Tsurugi. There were a lot of climbers there, many of them taking pictures. So I had to actually do a bit of waiting in order to take my own photo. But I had finally made it. So I put some money into the shrine, prayed for a safe descent down the mountain. Because even though I was at the top of Mount Tsurugi, the hike was far, far from over. I decided to take the ridge of the early moon Hayatsukione path, and I was joined by a man named Kaneda, who wore an old-style rice farmer's hat, or a Raiden hat. So together we climbed down the other jagged slopes to go down the long, far ridgeline. This path took hours and hours to go down, and we didn't even reach the rest hut for at least another 4 hours, and that was only the halfway point. Did it. Made it to the mountain cabin. There's still quite a few hours to go down from here, but from this point on it's just a typical hiking trail. So all the danger zone is finally over. Sleep. I just realized now I've been up for 36 hours. Oh. My face is red and I can't tell if that's from exhaustion or sunburn, but maybe a bit of both. I'm almost done this trail. So we're at about 1,000 meters and the start of the trail's at 800 meters. And the summit of this mountain is just under 3,000 meters. So we've descended basically 2,000 meters, 2 vertical kilometers. And as you can see, it's quite hot now at the bottom. The final word. Tsurugidake is a mountain of risks, challenges, but most prominently, with all its perils, Tsurugidake is unapologetically a mountain of true adventure. It was an end goal that I had worked on for over 2 years. It showed me that with enough training and determination, even a colossus can be conquered. So the only question that remains is, where do I go from here?